Okay, so welcome to our flipped classes videos. The idea for me is to give you a brief show of what we'll be doing beforehand in class, so that way once we have a look at in class together, you can ask questions, you can get all your doubts out once we're in class. So here, today we'll be looking at, as you can see on your screen, reported speech. Reported speech, as we've seen in previous years, is the idea of reporting what someone has said. So why is it that this is useful? Okay, we use reported speech when we're interested not in the words that someone has chosen, but in the essential information conveyed. All right, for strict grammatical and testing reasons, you will always be asked to report and use the words that they have given you. All right. We also often use less words to report this, but once again, this is real English and not once you're testing, you use the words that you are given. Reported speeches, it is very common. You often find it in newspaper reports, fiction, talking or writing about conversation, reports, articles, or speeches we have heard or read. Okay, so let's have a look at what reported speech is. Reported speech, another way of saying it, is direct speech, and you can always find it in between speech marks. So for example, in this case, we've got, I'll take you to the shopping center tomorrow, which is our reported speech expression. When we report this, okay, you will have to change a few aspects. Some of the aspects are tense, the subject, and the time reference. For example, here you've got the subject. If you have a look, it's in purple. And I knew, well, he said he would take her. So you can see that the subject is no longer I, but he, and in this case you, it's her. Right? You also make a change in the time reference. So for example, tomorrow would change into the following day. Another aspect that changes, as you can see, it in red, is the tense. So here, for example, will take goes to would take. This aspect, in layman's terms, we say that it goes 1/10 back, as you can see here. You will see later on the table that I give you is that it always goes 1/10 back. So from present simple goes to past simple, and so on and so forth. Is there always a change in tense? As in English, not necessarily. Okay, there's no change in the tense when we report it. When, for example, the reporting verb is in the present, so instead of putting he said, you can see he says. All right, in that case, there's no change in the tense. And also when there hasn't been any change since the original statement or question. So for example, when we're talking about I like ice cream, she says she likes ice cream. She liked? No, because it's still something that is true. It's a fact that today is still happening. Okay, so here you've got the table. As you can see, all the different changes in the tense that you've got. So present simple goes to past simple, present continuous to past continuous, present perfect to past perfect, and so on. As you can see, most important that present perfect and past simple both go to past perfect when you are reporting the speech. Okay, so need to bear that in mind. Will goes to would, going to, was, were, going to, first condition to second conditional, and so on. An aspect that you need to take into account is that the changes in the tense, and don't forget the rest of the things that change. Okay, so for example, time and place references. Today would go on to that day, tomorrow, the following day, next week, yesterday, last year. This would go into that, and these to those. All right, so this is reporting statements. Reporting questions, we still have to face the same aspects that you change the tense, you change the subject, you change the time reference. but also we change the word order. Okay, so for example, if you have a look at this question, you've got here the questions in present simple. So from present simple, we know it goes to past simple. So the question here starts with the question word, where do you come from? To report it, she asked me, as we know is the subject, where I came from. Here it is no longer a question, so for obvious reasons we need to change the word order. And as you can see here, we have a question with question words. We've got he asked or wanted to know, very common reporting verbs for questions, the question word, the subject, and the verb. Okay, so in this case it could be she asked me, she asked him. Okay, she asked someone where I, the subject, came from. Now if you have a look at the questions with starting with an auxiliary, do, did, have, am, is, are, and so on, something is different. Okay, once again it goes from a question to a statement, so there's a change in the word order, but we use expression if or whether instead of using the auxiliary. So for example, do you speak French? He wanted to know if or whether I spoke French. We've got the reporting verbs, if or whether, the subject and the verb. In this case, if or whether can be used simultaneously. It's just to give you a bit more of an extra word variety. Okay, so this is reported questions. Remember that when we report the question, there needs to be a change in the word order, so this is where most students lose marks, that they forget to do this change. Okay, so now moving on. So that is reported statements, reported questions. Now we're going to look at reporting requests and orders. Okay, so what changes here is that the way that we start. Okay, so for example, be quiet. Okay, we have in the direct speech, the teacher ordered the class to be quiet. As you can see here, there's a difference because there's no change in the tense. All right, these are easier, tend to be easier. So for example, can you close your books? The examiner told us to close our books. Okay, so these questions, as you can see, are both affirmative requests. Okay, so when we report affirmative requests, we ask, tell, or ordered. These are our most common reporting verbs. Yes, there are more, but for our purposes, we do not need any more. So we ask, tell somebody, so ask, them, the class, all right, to, and the verb in infinitive. Okay, when the request starts with a negative, don't park on the pavement, for example, it's a negative request, so it's the same thing, but we just add not. So we got asked, tell, or ordered somebody not to, and the verb in infinitive. I hope this is cleared. Reported speech we'll still be looking at in class. Okay, so I hope this has made some sense to you. And any questions, feel free to ask them in class.